Meeting to order. And please join me in the flag salute.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, topics from the floor. It'll be limited to 5 minutes each, and it's for any topic that is not on the public hearing agenda. If anybody has any, please step forward. Nobody online either?
I'm not bringing a topic to the floor. This is David. I'm just noting that I'm attending via Zoom this evening.
Thanks, David. So planning commission minutes dated December 10th, 2024. Everybody get a chance to read those?
Yep.
Any corrections or motion?
Well, they looked good to me, so I would move to accept them as written.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Nobody? Anybody? And then the Joint Planning Commission and City Council minutes dated December 11th, 2024. Any corrections or motions?
Nope. Make a motion that we accept them as written.
I will second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Are you opposed?
Aye.
Okay. The discussion item, chair and vice chair selection.
What you've been dreading.
How do we go about that?
Someone makes a motion?
I move for you to be the chair.
Thanks.
Second.
And that.
I will enthusiastically support that. Aye.
I was expecting it, so it's fine. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I guess.
Thanks, Scott, for your confidence. And then vice chair, I would like to nominate Commissioner Cisco Brooke for vice chair.
Second.
Second. Yep.
I don't know if I get to make a motion or not since I'm chair now.
Here now, so I'll make a motion to accept Brooke as vice chair. I second his motion.
Aye.
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 I heard David say aye. Okay. So new chair and vice chair. Thanks. Good backup. Appreciate it. Are you willing to do that?
No problem.
So. Right, it is now 6:33 p.m. The public hearing is now open. This is a quasi judicial land use hearing. The subject of this hearing is a request for 3 variances. The subject property is identified on the county assessor's map as lot 100 on map 4N1W-4AB. The applicant is Kevin and Catherine McCarter. The owner is the same as the applicant. Because quasi judicial proceedings require the observance of certain procedural formalities, we will take a few moments to cover some preliminary matters and required statements. Does any member of the commission wish to declare a potential or actual conflict of interest or bias in this matter? David?
Nope. No conflict or bias.
Does any member of the commission wish to declare an ex parte communication or site visit?
Nope.
Does anyone in the audience object to the ability of a commissioner to make a fair decision? Generally, the order of proceedings will be as follows: required statements, staff report, applicant's presentation, those in favor of the application, neutral testimony, those opposed, rebuttal by applicant, final questions, close of the record, deliberations, and decision. Following statements are required to be made at the commencement of the hearing pursuant to City Code and ORS 197.7975. The following is a list of the applicable substantive criteria for the decision. St. Helens Municipal Code 17.108.050 criteria for granting a variance. All testimony, arguments, and evidence must be directed toward the applicable substantive criteria as described or other criteria of the comprehensive plan or land use regulation which the person believes applies to the decision. Failure to raise an issue, including constitutional or other issues relating to the proposed conditions of approval in this hearing in person or in writing, or failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to avoid the approving authority an opportunity to respond to the issue, precludes appeal to LUBA, the Land Use Board of Appeals, on that issue, and precludes an action for damages in the circuit court. Good.
All right, thank you. So as our chair noted, we're here tonight for 3 variances. And so we're on Hankey Road, 35732 Hankey Road to be specific. So if you're familiar with this, this is Hankey Road leads you to the Elk Ridge subdivision. And what the applicant's requesting is a property line down the middle of 2 existing structures. And so all of the variances they're applying for, the 3 of them, are related to our lot standards for partition. So we've got 1 variance for reduced side yard. So both of the side yards are deficient between the 2 structures for the zoning. 1 variance is for reduced lot size. So this lot here is smaller than the lot size that would be allowed under the R7 zoning, 7,000 square feet. And then the last variance is for a reduced lot width. And that's the width of the building line. So this lot here is too narrow at the building line. And we'll talk about those in greater detail. So the subject property itself is 0.31 acres. So here's the subject property for the existing lot. And as I mentioned, this is the proposed lot line down the middle in red here. So it's got a single family dwelling on it here. That's on the north lot. That's the existing house. And then in 2015, they applied for a building permit to build an attached shop. That's what you see here, the 30 by 30 shop. So importantly, this shop is a garage below and then living space on the 2nd floor. So it puts it at over 600 square foot gross floor area. And our code doesn't allow accessory structures over 600 square feet. And so at the time they put this breezeway to connect the 2 structures. So we called it a building addition. That was how they allowed that. This is important because we went out on site and the breezeway had been demolished. So right now we have a non-conforming situation. Either way this variance goes, permitting is going to be needed to get this shop to be converted formally into a dwelling, because we do allow 2 dwellings on a property. So there's a way to make this legal without any exceptions to the code. We just need to see the proper permitting for that. So also important was that building permit to build the shop was by the same applicant. So in 2015, they were the same owners. They built this shop in its location that it is today. I think that's it for background. So as I mentioned, this property is R7 zoning. So in the R7 zone, the minimum side yard is 7 feet. And the applicant is proposing a property line that would create a 4.1 foot side yard along the dwelling. So along this property line, there's 50 inches proposed, or 4.1 feet. And then a 3.8 foot side yard from the shop. So 46 inches to that property line. So that's the first step back. The first variance, excuse me. Variance number 2 is for reduced lot size. So the minimum lot size is 7,000 square feet for detached single family dwellings. The lot with the shop would be approximately 5,100 square feet. So it would be about 1,900 square foot short of a minimum lot for R7. The other lot with the existing house would be 84,000. And these are approximate numbers. This property would need a subsequent survey to kind of formalize all of these dimensions if we were to lean towards approval tonight. And then the third variance is for reduced lot width. So the minimum lot width at the building line in R7 is 60 feet. So this one is met. It's really hard to see that dimension here, but this is 60 feet here. This lot width is only 47.8. So it's about 12 feet short of the minimum lot width at the building line.
The bottom lot.
Yep, the one with the shop. So as with variances, we look at our 5 criteria. I'm gonna go through those. I think we'll talk about it a little bit more as we go through it too. So on this one, I want to look at the aerial. So I included this exhibit to kind of show the surrounding area a little bit more. So the subject property is in yellow here. And you can kind of see there's a subdivision to the north. And then there's some larger lots. The lot lines are really hard to see on this map, but hopefully you saw on your hard copies the kind of surrounding area. And that's important because the first criteria talks about if the variance is detrimental to the surrounding properties in the vicinity. And generally, the surrounding properties are greater than 7,000 square foot lot sizes and do generally meet the 7-foot side setbacks. And just for reference, the city's highest density zoning apartment residential requires a minimum of 5 feet setback. And so the applicant's requesting quite a big side setback variance, considering our highest density is 5 feet and we've got less than 4 in some cases. I also wanted to point out with this, so the property owner also owns this large undeveloped lot to the north. So the same owner and applicant. And that's important because there's an existing gravel driveway that serves that undeveloped lot. You can kind of see the circular gravel driveway right here. And in order to serve the proposed northern lot, the applicant is proposing a shared access easement through that undeveloped lot that would serve the northern lot that has the house on it already. So I can go back to this here. So here's where they've labeled old driveway. They're proposing some type of shared access agreement to serve a parking area that would be in the back. You know, our code requires that each lot with dwelling has 2 non-tandem paved parking spaces. So that would be a requirement as part of their partition. And I just pointed out that that's a really good likely location for development of an access that would serve that property if it were ever developed in the future. Because Hankey Road is pretty steep and there's a pretty big curve in the road. And so that access is the furthest away from that steep curve. So it's a good point for access. That was all I was pointing out. And then I also wanted to note that with the future land division that the applicant would propose, both the access and the parking would need to be paved as part of that subsequent decision.
That's an important point. We don't have a land partition application at this time. That would be something they would need to apply for. And the idea is they're seeing if they can get the variances to apply to that before putting the effort into the land partition.
When we get to the conditions, you'll see there's quite a few conditions, and it's more just, those are all the things that would need to be addressed as part of a future partition, but right now that's not what they're applying for. They're just seeing if they can get variances that would support. Say that again. So for criteria B, special and unique circumstances, the planning commission would have to come up with a finding here. I didn't really note anything from a staff perspective. The applicant built the shop. So it's difficult to find special and unique circumstances. That are outside of the applicant's control, rather. So criterion C. Applicable standards are maintained to the greatest extent reasonably possible. So with this one, I just wanted to point out on the photos. So in this criteria, I pointed out, there's a number of structures that would cross over that proposed property line. So this retaining wall is kind of about where that property line is proposed. You can also see there's a porch that has stairs down into a landing. And that would also cross into the proposed property line. So either those structures would have to be altered, or there would have to be some type of maintenance agreement between the two properties so that if they were ever sold separately, we know who's responsible for maintenance. Typically, we don't like to see structures over property lines. There's another angle. This is from the back. So that's something that would have to be addressed. Our building official also noted that this eave for the shop extends within 3 feet of the proposed property line. And so it would either have to be altered to reduce its size, or it would have to be reconstructed to meet fire separation requirements. So, building officials get excited when you have structures close to property lines. And so that's another thing that would have to be addressed. Criterion D, physical and natural systems cannot be adversely affected. There's existing frontage improvements that wouldn't be altered. So you can see there's sidewalk, curb, and gutter. There's already a driveway apron where that proposed shared access would be. So that's not proposed to change. I did want to point out the storm drain here is directed towards the proposed property line. And when you're creating lots with super narrow setbacks, you have less area to deal with stormwater and the natural grade of the site. You're going to have stormwater nuisance issues if that's not addressed. And so there might be some stormwater improvements that would be required as part of a partition. And then I'm just pointing out there's a lot of shared utilities between the two properties. So power, sewer, and water would all have to have their own separate utilities as part of a partition. That's pretty typical for partition applications. And not really part of the variance, but it's something worth pointing out that makes this a complicated partition. Criterion E, variance is not self-imposed and it's the minimum necessary to alleviate the hardship. I just wanted to point out that the code does permit 2 dwellings without any exceptions, without reconfiguration of utilities, without any easements. As an allowed outright use, you are allowed to have 2 dwellings on a property. And so if these variances are granted, it's going to be a really complicated partition. And that's all I have.
Okay. Please remember that we can ask questions at this time, but cannot deliberate until after the public hearing is closed. That said, does the commissioner have any questions of staff?
I'm a little confused, Jenny, on the it was required to have the breezeway before so that it would be considered one building.
Mhm.
But things changed to where now 2 buildings are
Yeah,
allowed, or
exactly. Yeah. So now we are allowed. So since 2015, we're allowed to have 2 dwellings on a property without.
one had to be bigger.
Well, you'd have to have an ADU permit at the time.
Okay.
We no longer require ADU permits.
Okay.
And so allowed outright, you're allowed to have 2 dwellings that are detached. What you aren't allowed is to have an accessory structure larger than 600 gross floor area, which is what's currently occurring.
And what we couldn't find is a permit that officiated the shop as a dwelling. There's nothing that we could find in the building permit records to where it got to that point. It's something that we discussed with them quite a bit at the time, because they had a relative that was living there. When they first built it, is it going to have enough to be a dwelling unit or not? But now the rules are more flexible. It's just a matter of finaling the official status of the building.
Any other questions? Anybody? Uh. Do the applicants have a presentation?
We're here. I don't really have much more than there, but yeah, I can answer.
But just some of the
Comments, I think.
The sound system works better from right under that
Oh, okay.
X up there, so. You see that on here, end up with you talking. Can you state your names for the record?
Sorry, Catherine McCarter.
And McCarter.
So a couple of the comments that we have is that the building official did not come out and measure those eaves, and they do meet the requirements for space between the two existing buildings. There's 3 feet, 3 feet. Correct?
It has to be offset by 2 inches, so 46 inches on one side and 50 inches on the other side.
And the total distance between the two buildings is how much? 8 feet?
8 feet.
So there is space for those eaves that they're talking about, the fire breaks on top. I don't know if that makes sense. So we wanted to comment on that. We also wanted to comment that the existing porch and the retaining wall. The porch actually has 2 accesses on the porch already in place. And so we would just simply move the stairs to the other side of the porch to remove that access. This driveway. No, there's on the existing house up here, right? Yeah, there's another stair or another access off the other side of the porch. So we would just remove that and remove that top portion of the retaining wall so that it would not encroach upon the new property line. And then we had already figured we would have to put in a new sewer to connect the streets, so we were already looking at those variant, like, we're not asking for those easements. We already assumed we would have to put in its own sewer line out to the street.
Right now, both buildings have their own separate water meters and water lines and electric lines. They have separate billing totally. The only common element between them is a sewer. So we knew if we did want to go forward, we'd have to put a new sewer in.
For the existing original house.
Yeah.
Is that it?
I think so.
That's not. Oh, redirect the drains. There's that one drain in the back of the house. There's a French drain actually that was built around the shop and the garage to deal with water. And so there's not water and runoff that actually goes between those two buildings.
But I could redirect downspouts. The downspout on the front of the house is currently outputting in the direction of the driveway. I could put that on the furthest end of the house so that it would drain out into the yard, give it more time to get absorbed. And there on the back of the house, one drain is already far from the proposed property line. The second drain gutter is on that corner of the house, so I could move it as far up the hill as possible and put a longer downspout on it to put it further into the grass, if that would help. Maybe build a berm, or what other ideas there might be.
The rest of it is all very accurate. Other than I didn't realize we had to have it as an AD because it's a full apartment upstairs with a 900 square foot apartment up above.
There's no ADU permitting anymore.
I don't, yeah, so, and we're kind of confused too, admittedly, about the two structures on one property and splitting the property. But I do want to point out, there are a couple of lots down, not far from us, that actually have smaller breezeways that they're very close together and connected. I'm talking about the properties over by the employment office. that whole development in there.
Oh, DMV.
Oh,
Oh,
the DMV.
yeah, that's attached housing.
Yeah, so they have those, and then there's also a lot not far from us either that has no driveway, no garage, no nothing. I don't even know what that's zoned for, but it's very small. They're at the,
Yeah, but the apartments on.
by the apartments down on, Columbia, yeah, by Columbia. And then there's another one they're trying to permit not far from us either on Pittsburgh Road, which is very small. That can't even be an R4. So, I don't know.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any testimony in support of the application? Is there anyone online, Jenny?
Just David. Thanks for asking.
Any neutral testimony, those who are not in favor or against the proposal?
I should have come up in favor, but
Can you state your name for the record?
Al Peterson, 101 St. Helens Street. I just have two questions, really. I think it should, based on what I heard from the applicants, it seems like a no-brainer to me. You know, they're gonna have to deal with some of the complications of it, but that's their problem. But I just have two questions. And it's really mostly of staff because I'd never heard of a dimension at the building line. Usually it's how much frontage you have at the street. So, you know, I personally would just like a little clarification on that. And then secondly, the two buildings on one lot, I don't quite understand related to ADUs because I thought it was still in the ADU thing. So it's just clarifications and it's probably has to do with the changes that were made, but the frontage question, I just don't quite get because usually it's frontage at the street. And that has, they got 52 feet frontage and they got 54 feet frontage. So I don't know, I don't get the, you know, at the building line, I just don't get it.
So, in our lot width standards, most of the zonings specify lot width at the street and at the building line. And in some cases, it can be narrower at the building line. But then the remainder has to be wider. It looks longer than I've worked here and every partition and subdivision reviewed in the last 17 plus years. That's something that we have considered. And in this case too. So in this case, the portion that abuts the right of way is okay, but it's the narrowness of the overall lot. And then as far as the ADU, our code allows it to be called that, but there is no special permitting or restriction for that second unit other than all the basic things that would apply to the first dwelling, meaning your setbacks, your lot coverage, and that kind of thing. And that was when we had to implement House Bill 2001, where cities above 10,000 in population, including St. Helens, became obligated to allow duplexes anywhere we allowed single-family dwellings. And in our discussion with the council, although the state did not mandate it, we said that that could be in the detached form.
Okay,
Yeah.
now I get it. Okay.
And all that stuff, you know.
I didn't know about the detached part.
Yeah. So that was when we went the extra mile to be, well. And like the former mayor said, when we posed that question, why not? And nobody challenged it, so that's what we went with.
But importantly, that shop and living space was developed prior to those rules. And so at the time, there was a memo that said, as part of the building permit conditions of approval, this is not a dwelling because you would have been required to get an ADU permit, which they didn't get. And so now we have a not a dwelling and an existing house.
And it's zoned R7. And back then a duplex would have required a conditional use permit. And so it was this, you know, they didn't want it to be a duplex. They wanted it to be an accessory structure. That's why it had the breezeway. Of course, now if they did it, the rules are a lot easier. So all the finagling that we worked on back then we wouldn't have to work on now. So that's just kind of the evolution of when they started, the changes in the law, and where we're at today.
Right. Is there any testimony in opposition of the application? None? The applicants have a right to rebut anything that was said if you feel the need to add anything or.
So yeah, if you want to rebut Al's mostly positive comment.
I'm grateful for Alan. He knows way more about it.
But this is kind of your last call to provide testimony if you so choose. Because then the public hearing will be closed and then it's their time to talk.
Yeah, I don't know what I would provide anymore about. I mean, you pretty much covered it in there. I think for us, it seems very basic for us. We're just trying to split off those two properties. And we're willing to make the accommodations necessary to make each one its own whole property.
Does the commission have any final questions? David?
Nope, I'm good. Thank you.
Hearing no further questions from the commission and no further responses from staff, the public record is closed and this matter is returned to the table for deliberations and oral decision. All right, now's the time that we get to deliberate and vote.
So I kind of have a question, well, it's not really a question, just a concern, I guess. If we approve the variance and then they come back and split the lots up, now we've created an aerial trespass for the power. So
Sorry.
aerial trespass for the power to the existing house would then cross across the property of the shop. And so in that case, we would need it, I mean, you're by creating an aerial trespass and the easement for that would take care of that issue. So I don't know if that's something that we can suggest or require, but it, because you're crossing one property to serve another property.
And you're not approving the land division tonight.
Just kind of thinking ahead. So.
Yeah, and that was, if I may, there are some, if we go down that route, there's some recommended conditions of approval and it addresses that utility question. I noted that on my site, but there's power that crosses the property line and it's actually on this site plan too. You can see it. This P right here.
Yeah.
So in addition to sewer, they would have to address that power connection. And you know, this is showing the water over here crossing. I don't know if that's inaccurate or not, but all of these things would have to be surveyed in anyway. And that's also addressed in those conditions on page 5. Staff report.
Are all three variances tied together or?
They wouldn't be able to proceed with the partition if they all three were not great.
Okay, just wanted to clarify that. And just to clarify one other thing, so now that I'm chair, I'm a non-voting. Is that?
Right.
Anybody else?
You could vote if there's insufficient people for votes, but we'll deal with that. We don't have that problem tonight, so.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'm just working sort of backwards through our criterion. Because I think that's probably the best way for us to do this is just to start from A and go down or E to go and go up.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I'm. Sorry, I'm just wrapping my head around and I know we've been over this around the change in terms of the not an ADU. So the takeaway is that it is now a perfectly legitimate option to have two separate residential buildings on that plot, correct?
I think the permitting just needs to catch up with what is existing on site.
Thank you. Thank you.
So the fact that one is over 600 feet is still an issue though, right?
Per our records right now, that is an accessory structure, not a dwelling. That's the issue.
We assume that it'll be easy though,
Yeah.
to change over.
Where I'm stuck is on criteria E, the hardship is not self-imposed. I feel like it is self-imposed. Trying to get around that.
That is a tough one.
That is actually ticks those boxes.
Because again, as things stand now, the code just allows for both of those buildings to be there, and one to be used as an accessory structure or whatnot. So I suppose the question would be what issue is subdividing solving that isn't self-imposed?
You can't, if you have two homes on the same lot, you can't sell them separately.
Got it.
So it's ownership issues.
Yeah.
I feel like C and D can be met, but I'm A, B, and E are my issues.
Just takes one.
Speak up. Sorry, I couldn't hear.
Reading through this, that was general opinion when we've all come in here. And it
Yeah,
seems
I think
that some of this is, these criteria are not met as it states. It has to be met. If that is our guidance, then just one of them isn't met. Thanks the whole ship.
Have a motion? You also have any?
I'll move to do I need to move to deny each variance or accept them separately, or can I just say that I feel like we're not going to come to an agreement on all three variances on A through E, so I would move to reject the application as a whole.
Is there any more addition?
Yeah, I second.
Seem like there is, so. Does that need to be based on findings and fact? Motion? Staff?
Well, we have the testimony. And sometimes, we glean from that to help with the findings.
Right, did we have a seconded?
Yes.
Right, so it's been moved and seconded to deny these three variances. So Commissioner Cisco?
Aye.
Aye. With apologies, I'm an aye also.
David?
Aye.
All right. Signature? Okay. Somebody want to move for signature?
I move.
Seconded.
Aye.
Aye.
David?
Aye.
So what the motion for signature is to facilitate us whipping up the decision, having the chair sign it, rather than waiting before the next hearing or meeting to put it before them.
So do we appeal it? Do we go to the state? What do we do?
We can talk to you about that offline,
Okay.
but there you do have appeal rights.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
So then, just to clarify for me, since I'm reading through this script for the first time, or second time, so are the final decision making authority on that?
Yep, this will be the decision. And then it'll get mailed, I think it says in there.
A written decision of the planning commission may be appealed to the city council. The notice of decision will be mailed to all persons who testified or submitted comments, and the appeal deadline will be included in the notice. All right,
Excuse me.
looks like we're on to planning commission interviews. May is first.
7:10.
State that.
No, just,
Trying to keep them around 15 minutes.
yeah.
Okay.
They work.
So if you noticed in your packet, they included some examples of questions. You could ask. Hi, Jay.
Thank.
How are you?
Great.
Seeing the questions there now. Separate.
I know you have questions. Do you, if I make some introductory comments,
Like, that would be great.
you have absolutely no idea who I am.
We'd
And the
appreciate that.
questions may or may not address that, so I thought it'd be worthwhile.
That would be helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm a whopping 3-year resident, St. Helens. My wife and I moved out here 3 years ago. I'm 73 years old, parent, 2 kids, 8 grandkids. My background and professional background has been in sales for 50 years. Latest episode, I was vice president of a publishing company that did $80 million. I had 40 staff underneath me. I was responsible for strategic planning, budgeting, sales, every aspect of that. My other 2 expertise is I've been heavily involved in the sports world, lived 45 years in East County, ran Gresham Little League, Babe Ruth, Legion, which encompassed 1,500 kids and a $500,000 budget in sports, supplies, fields, organization, leadership. And also was involved with the Gresham Barlow School District for over 15 years, budget, curriculum, and foundation boards. Gresham Barlow has 11,000 students, is the 5th largest school district in the state. On the foundation board, we raised $3 million for ancillary funding of the school district, but in curriculum and budget obviously entailed a lot of what you're doing, state law, balancing budgets. School districts do not have the luxury of deficit spending. It's against the law. A board member is held liable. So that was a challenge in the last 15 years. So problem solving, initiative, leadership, training is a lot of my background.
Great, thank you for that. So I'll start off. It's like, why now? Why are you interested in being on the planning commission?
Great question. Having lived out here 3 years, supplanted after 45 years in East County, and you just heard my involvement on that side. It's in my DNA to be involved. So I live on 2nd Street overlooking probably the biggest development this city has ever done, the waterfront project. And that spurred my interest. What is the process? What are you looking at? What are the funding? What is the means of getting developers involved? So just a deeper relationship in the community. And at 73 years old, I'm gainfully unemployed and am lacking for things to do. So would love to be. So I would love to be involved deeper.
Right.
I see. So you're just appointed to the library board as well?
Yes.
Job yet?
Yes, we just started. We're growing the makerspace area. I perused the city's resolution. I didn't know if it was allowed to be on two different boards, and I saw in the resolutions it has to have an exception granted in the process. But I've been working deeply with Suzanne on fundraising. The library is a well-oiled machine. I've been in publishing for 25 years, so I'm a voracious reader. So it was a natural start for me in the community.
So you anticipate meetings continuing on?
Oh, absolutely. I would not want to give that up. It's a tremendous asset to the city, and she's doing a great job over it.
Part of the criteria for being on planning commission is that you at least have to have an interest in historic preservation. Can you speak to that at all?
That's a wonderful question. I'm in my sales career. I've traveled probably 45 of 50 states, and my lasting passion the last few years, the United States has got 250 years of history and wanting to see it. So I have family on the East Coast, and we've been going through Charleston, Savannah, customers in the Boston area, looking at history, old buildings, how they came to be. So it is one of my newer interest areas, architecture, planning, and what goes into that.
Someone jump in.
Yeah, so the planning commission a couple of years ago decided it wanted to be proactive. Thinking about the city of St. Helens, your, tenure here so far, what does being proactive mean to you?
Fabulous question. Being a sales guy, if you're not proactive, the world passes you by. Customers don't call you asking to order. You have to seek and find. Buying signals include a fear from something or attraction to something. The city is positioned for growth almost beyond any other city in a 100-mile radius of Portland. I look at Vancouver, McMinnville, Hood River, some of the downtown areas that have been developed and are magnets for attraction. And I think St. Helens is ripe for that. I'll be quite frank with you. I drive down Main Street down here with the storefronts closed and non-retail oriented, and I get very concerned, especially with the newer area come in. The area is robust. Saying in real estate has always been location, location, location. How many cities are sitting on the Columbia River within 30 minutes of a metropolis area of 1.5 million people? So I think the opportunity for sustained growth, smart growth, needs to be pursued out here. And I think the waterfront project is the first step in that area, but there's probably other pieces of property that would lend themselves to that as well. You only have to go up the I-5 corridor on the Washington side up to Woodland in that area where the casino is. And certainly that was a driver, but there's a whole new city that's there that wasn't there 10 years ago, driving a tax base, jobs, employment, et cetera, and is a draw. And I think St. Helens has that same ability.
Thank you for that. And I know that myself and a number of other members of the commission share those concerns about vacant storefronts and space usability. And so now that I think based on that, I've got a sense of what kind of issues might be particularly of interest to you, I'd like to steer us back towards a more pedestrian but still important question, which is we deal with members of the public in this role, as you've seen. Sometimes our reading of the relevant statutes compels us to give answers to people that are not what they were looking for. So I'm curious how you would describe your ability representing the community in that fashion, dealing with disappointment, dealing with potential conflicts of interest, and so forth?
Fabulous question. Hate to default back to my background, but in sales, you get 9 no's for every 1 yes, and your job is to find a way and solve the problem of the customer. You're dealing in a legal format here. I just heard the testimony. Proactive, great development, but may or may not need code, and laws need to be adhered to. But I also think you need to be consumer friendly, A, in how you communicate that information, and B, how, if I can be so bold in saying workarounds. Our job, I think, in the city is to care for the community within the guidelines of state and federal laws, but to do everything in our power to facilitate public safety, growth, economic, job growth, taxation, et cetera. So having been in my background in sports, there's things you can do and things that you can't do. And obviously in the school district arena, there was a lot of times we dealt with parental involvement and just begged to say yes to a troubled kid. But there was guidelines that we couldn't do for the greater good of everybody else. People like to say we live in a republic, but it's really a democracy of what's available for the greater good. So I hear the question. I don't think there's a great answer, but being a problem-solving person with my background, I would go to lengths to work through situations that have disappointment attached to them. And we just heard, even though the decision wasn't correct, there's an appeals process somewhere to go. For me, there's always a solution. No, it's just the beginning of the discussion.
Great, thank you.
Staying on time, we got 3 minutes.
I just have one thing. Those of us on the commission, myself included, are serving because we love this community. What is the thing that you love most about St. Helens?
You know, my first wife died in 2018 from dementia. I did 9 years of caregiving, and I was lucky to meet a fellow widow school teacher of 30 years, and her family vacationed on Sand Island for 42 years. And when we were dating, she took me to Sand Island and I went, what is this? I've lived out in boring Damascus, Gresham. I'd never seen this area. And I thought I was in Hawaii. And I thought, this is the greatest community I've never seen in my life. And as I told you, I've been in 45 different states. And we got married, and God ordained a house coming available on South 2nd Street. Russ helped me with a little development of an Airbnb, and we've laid down roots. And I just think this community, I'll use a negative word, reeks of history and opportunity for where we are as a city and what the future entails for it.
I don't know if this is appropriate, but do we have any questions from our liaison?
Yeah, I think that's appropriate.
We used to be on the committee together. It just,
Because they're supposed to, they're part of the interview panel of sorts.
hold on just a sec. Do you guys have any questions?
I don't, it was very thorough.
Yeah, Scott?
I'm wondering, asking if you've done anything in order to prepare yourself for this interview specifically.
Being a sales guy, I'm used to being on the fly. I've read extensively the city budget, what's going on, losing a major taxpayer with the mill, and now getting new people in there. But I've read chapter and verse the finances of the city. I haven't done any, to be quite honest, any research on planning, building, where we are. Do we have a developer that area? What's going on? But my natural background is just to jump feet first in with an open mind to what's going on. And my background skills and history, I think, would adapt well to the commission.
You didn't do 50 push-ups to get yourself psyched out?
Yeah, no,
Can you pronounce your last name for me so I get it correct?
great question. Echternach. You can't tell by my blue eyes and blonde hair. I'm German.
All right, well, thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks for the time.
Next applicant is Joshua Walter. Hello. How are you doing today?
Well, and yourself?
So we keep it all similar. Would you like to give us a little background on yourself?
Give a spiel, yeah. Born and raised in Pine, Oregon. Grew up there and I was 18, graduated, moved to Scappoose. Fell in love with a woman I met there, a youth group, and got married, moved to Portland for a couple of years, then decided that we wanted to find a place that was, I hated Lapine when I lived there, but looking back, it's where I wanted to raise my kids. It's the town I want to raise my kids in, right? And so we wanted to find that, and my wife grew up in Scappoose, so we moved to Scappoose and had a couple kids. Got really involved in a church here in town, and I kind of got involved in the community and decided to take the leap to St. Helens 2 years ago, and bought a place on 7th downtown, right next to the Twilight House. We had to see if that's a mistake, but anyway, like the previous, I dive in by nature in everything we do. So with the church, I dive in, and I'm very involved in the youth group, in worship ministry there, and spend a lot of my time volunteering hours there. And then I started to dive into the community. And so there's a couple of passion projects I have, namely around natural organic food because of history and like local markets and foods and things like that. And I have a passion for agritourism, and got involved with trying to bring Saturday markets to town, weekend markets, things like that. Started talking with some people involved there in Salisbury, and got really involved in the heart of the city, getting excited about its development, where it was going. And by nature, I'm a dreamer with my head in the clouds, and I pretty much think that I can do anything and turn anything into a business. So for a long time, I spent dreaming of everything you drive by, like, oh, that old abandoned place, I can do this or all this. And so what that does is it turns me into then a fine planner where I analyze everything. And I got into realizing that there's codes and there's zones and there's all these things. And so I ended up getting a dream job where I can now work remote, and I spend all my day at home in software engineer. I'm software mostly, so I do a lot of software application consulting, and so that allowed me to be at home, but it also took my mind off of my entrepreneurship, if you will, and I love what I do. So I stay at home and I love what I do, but I also am involved with a lot of people that want to do things in town. So I know a lot of people that want to open businesses, that want to do this with their yard or whatnot. And I'm curious by nature. So I've always been curious of why things can't be done. And that led me to watching planning commission meetings and wanting to get involved. So that's what put me here. Is just now that I'm here, I have a remote job that allows me time to be involved. I really like being a liaison between, yeah, that's why I'm here.
All right, I see that you showed an interest on your application of 3 different committees, the planning commission being one. So you're enthusiastic. Good.
I just want to be involved anywhere, and parks and rec, parks. I love walking in the parks, and it was one of my things.
Yep. So you kind of answered my why. Have you attended any other meetings before, or you're just watching
I'm
online,
a
or?
frequent Zoom watcher. I haven't attended any in person, just schedule wise, and the job is within the last year. The remote job is in the last year, so that's been able to allow me more time to attend more things locally and not watch them online. But my wife is annoyed with how often I watch city council meetings and planning meetings and stuff like that.
So you probably heard me mention in the last interview that part of the criteria for being on planning commission is that you at least have an interest in historic preservation. Sounds like you might. Can you talk about that at all?
Yeah, so my mother grew up on a dairy farm at Dutch Canyon. And it's always been a dream to buy the land back, but that'll never happen. I'm a dreamer, so so like preserving the town and maintaining its character is part of the amazing piece of St. Helens. And so all the work that's been done downtown to maintain like the same look as all the historic rock pieces and is like that's what makes us special. And I think that you know, I think a good example is the first bank building that Beyond the Forest just did, how they like I had a buddy that wanted to do it and we were talking how it had to be done right because they should restore it to what it looked like, right? Not just turn it into some office space. And so I was so thrilled to see that they, you know, are taking the time to do it right. And so I think that the best way to enhance our city is to build upon the character that its history has. So build through that rather than just trying to make something new. You know, we are St. Helens. It's awesome. Like celebrate it. So.
So I'm curious, I think you've outlined various interests you've got in terms of why the planning commission. I'm curious if in the future you're looking back at your time on the planning commission, what is the one thing you would have wanted to get done, or what do you hope that you will accomplish by being on the planning commission? What would you want your legacy to be?
My word. That is
I know it's a little
that is
it's a little
giant
much.
question. The only thing I could say is on a small level, it's simply to help people like the few people that have come before, I watched those and I just got enthralled with being the process of explaining why someone can't do something or helping someone figure out here's an alternative, like the triplex to the duplex, like alternatives to solutions is like amazing. So you can like both assist someone through a dream they have, not outright crush dreams, or I guess sometimes you might, but you know, I'd hope to help bridge the gap between the decision and alternatives through creative means. If that, you know, as far as creating a legacy, I don't have an ambition to you know, anything further or, you know, I would just like to be part of a team that helps make sure that, you know, like I'm excited about the Riverfront project. I think it's a really cool thing. I think that the community gets really anxious and but I've been part of construction projects growing up and I know how it goes and there's usually really simple explanations for all of the things that people, and so like just getting involved answers a lot of the questions. And so I like being informed, if you will. And so just simply being someone that's known that to help bridge that gap and make a no seem not as a no, and then be able to celebrate the yeses too.
Excellent, thank you.
Love to say yes when we can.
I know, right?
Yeah.
We're all ambitious at heart.
Yeah.
You know, David got mine, and that was gonna be the legacy question. That's what I was gonna ask.
Mine is the same. You know, what do you love most about St. Helens? For me, volunteering on the commission is, you know, a love of this community. So what do you love about it?
I was gonna say St. Helens. I love, you know, there was a lot of talk the last election about, you know, welcoming outsiders and whatnot. And I'm technically an outsider, but I've been here 20 years. But like we all love the community and we all like have our own experiences and those that like dive in and help and have an honest like passion for the community are just amazing people. And that's why like I wanted to raise my kids here because like I haven't found people like this other than when I grew up in the 90s, and that's hard now, right? Like it's hard to find that community. And so being able trying to help protect that, you know, protect that small town feel. But I agree we have a potential to grow exponentially. And I think wise counsel and consideration to go into that. And I'm interested in being part of that and having an opportunity. So
Thank you.
there any issues that you've watched these meetings and all that? Are there any issues to you that stand out that you expound upon?
Issues that I could see.
Yes, well, not just you, but I mean, that have been raised during these meetings.
No, I just thought it was funny, like, most of the time, I was telling my dad, watching this meeting, I tend to fall on the side of, like, it's your land, you do what you want to, right? And then someone kind of, like, then you hear the explanations of why, and so then I like to bounce back and forth and I don't know if I'd like, see any problems that I like, but, any issues I might see is sometimes I might lean more towards, it's your land, you do what you want to, but that might be a good balance, but, that's my only issue, if that's what you mean.
It was informative, answer.
Anything?
Do you have any questions for us?
I mean, there's tons, but I think no, it was answered. I almost backed out because I was like, I was watching things beforehand and it's I don't know zoning and a lot of the stuff, and I was just like, this is too much for me, and I'll watch and I'll learn more, but no, it's just I think I just like to be involved. Yeah.
Give you a big giant book.
Yeah, great. Can't wait.
Yeah, the good news is you'll be provided with all of the zoning information
I
you
was
could
told,
possibly
yeah, I
want.
was-
Probably more.
So on your availability, so we meet once a month. We also have a quarterly joint meeting with the city council. We also, since we can no longer meet in subcommittees to be proactive, we may have to do some research on our own and bring it back to to the commission. So you have that availability? Was that any?
Yeah, like I said, I work remote and it's a dream job. I've been blessed by it. And so I really have availability. We work 4 days a week. So I have Fridays through the weekends off. So I have a lot of free time on Fridays to do things. And then, like I said, I can usually plan around meetings with my clients and the way I work, and I have a lot of flexibility with time. So that's one of the reasons I thought it'd be a good time to be part of that.
Anybody else have any questions? Liaison council members have any questions?
Thanks.
Right, yeah, it's the last one. Hello.
Go ahead and just start with an introduction.
Yeah, go ahead and do that.
My name's Trina Kingsbury. I've lived in St. Helens for 8 years now. I grew up in Hillsborough, moved to Scappoose, lived there a couple of years, fell in love with the area. And then when it was time to buy, my husband and I settled in St. Helens. I've worked in supply chain for my entire career. I'm in between jobs right now, so this kind of felt like a good time to really get involved and hit the ground running because I have extra time to commit to a commission like this. As far as my interest in St. Helens, I love this community. I love the river. I love the history that it has and the opportunity for growth too.
You live on the east side of the highway? Or
I live on the other side. I'm by McBride.
I find that interesting because live on.
So I frequent downtown. I love being able to walk on the river, and we have a boat, so we're out on the water quite a bit as well.
I'm on that side.
Well, we talked about it in the past, how it'd be nice to get a cross section of people from all parts.
All over the city, yeah.
Good.
The other side of the tracks.
Right. Right. So, why do you have an interest now in the planning commission?
Once I moved here, I realized I wanted to eventually get involved. So right now, being unemployed, I figured I've got some time. Let's get involved. But I've gotten to know the community a bit more over that time.
Do you feel like when you're employed again that you will have the time? Like
Yeah,
I've stated that we.
Yep. So when I started my career, I was actually a full-time student and full-time employee. So I was able to manage both of those commitments, and I think I'd be able to manage both of that going forward. And in all my previous roles, I've been able to leave early as needed for things. So the once a month, I don't see any issue making it here, and then having time to review material ahead of time as well.
We usually receive our packets the week before, so we have the weekend to look over, it, which is really important and helpful. So you heard me ask too about historic preservation, that you need to have at least an interest in that.
Yeah, absolutely. I love, I've done a couple of the walking tours around St. Helens. I still haven't made it into the museum for some odd reason, but I love learning about the history of this place. It tells a story, and our buildings are a part of that story, and it shows the art and culture of times, past times, and we can learn from that history as well. So.
David, you want to go next?
Yeah, thank you. So is there, yeah, I've realized that we asked the same question, so my apologies if you're like, oh man, sounds like this was already asked to other people, but I'm genuinely curious about everyone's answer. Are there particular functions of the planning committee that you're particularly interested in, or is what would you like to be able to get done as a part of being on the planning committee?
I think there's a lot of opportunity in St. Helens to continue to grow, and that also needs to be managed responsibly. We need to think about the decisions we make now, how that's going to impact us in the future. So it's part of just thinking through what we're looking at, allowing people to do what they want with their property within reason, but also thinking about the future. How does this impact us now, and does it work for the future as well?
Thank you.
Again, my first question to Achternock, Mr. Achternock was, how did you prepare for, or if you did anything specific for?
I've seen a few of the planning meetings before over Zoom or YouTube. I did attend one pre-COVID when we were talking about Sand Island campground. That was something that was of interest to me, of what are we doing here? Like, what is the plan for this? And I know that was something that, being a boater, that would impact me, of how we access the island and the community still having access to that island, which was an important aspect. I also read through the minutes. It's from the last meeting, and there's a lot of comparing of laws and codes and the end use of a project. So I did want to familiarize myself with some of the decisions that the commission was working on.
The commission is made up of all of us that, you know, really didn't know each other beforehand coming in. And we all bring something different to the commission. What is it that you think you bring that would help strengthen the commission?
Well, it sounds like I live on the different side of the tracks than mention.
You're known for that now.
I think I'm a little bit younger than a lot of the commission as well. I think it's important to have those generational voices. A diverse response helps with making sound decisions. You're getting a little bit more input from.
I think that's a good thing. I don't think it is a bad thing, that I'd like to
I was
see
gonna
it.
say, I resemble that remark.
I mean, about the other side of the track, it's a good thing that we have a cross section of the population.
I know.
Okay.
So have you had experience dealing with or been around like conflicts, things like that, whether it's external, internal? How do you
So,
handle that?
I've worked in supply chain, so I've been working with suppliers quite often. I've also worked in a somewhat sales position, so you are dealing with different people, different environments, and you're not always looking for the exact same solution. So dealing with those conflicts, it's where can we meet in the middle? How can we make this work? I think with the commission, though, it's very much a yes, no, where you're not necessarily working through all those challenges, but I think it's important to discuss those and say, okay, we can't do this because of this reason, and make it very clear on what path somebody else can take, kind of giving those creative solutions to the people to, I think, revise their plans if need be.
You get yelled at by people sometimes.
Yeah,
The supply chain during COVID?
Yeah. So,
Yeah, go I was gonna ask that.
yeah, so I worked in steel manufacturing, so not only was that hit during COVID, in the supply chain, but also every election year, there's another round of layoffs, so,
Yeah, it's great to say. I
interesting.
imagine that's been an exciting area to work in the last few years. And you can put exciting in italics as you like.
I lost a job and started a new job in 2020, so it was definitely an interesting time.
Well, I feel like you answered my question about what you love about St. Helens, and then my other one was kind of the conflict, so I feel good. I feel like everything
Does anybody have any more questions for Trina?
I'll ask the same question. Do you have any questions for us?
How much time do you guys spend on reviewing stuff? I think that's kind of setting expectations there.
Sometimes the packet is two small hearings and sometimes I mean, when I first started, I think we had one that we went over at midnight with the hearing, so the preparation was pretty deep, but nothing that's unreasonable. You can generally review it in a couple hours.
Okay. I know I went through the last minute, so I was just wondering if that was a typical meeting or.
Well, we haven't had any long ones in a while.
4-hour meeting in December.
Was
Yeah, I was
it?
gonna say mine went to like 10 or something.
Other than the meetings themselves, it's, I don't know. Several hours a month and that's about it. I mean, that's probably pushing it a little bit.
Yeah, and I would add to that, the amount of time, your ability to review the packets ahead of time gets faster as you go. There is a learning curve, and your first meeting or two, it's just sort of getting used to the code and getting used to the format, and after that, it goes, I found, much more smoothly, and I think that's fair to say.
I did actually find the whole minutes very interesting, so that wasn't a difficult read.
Here's my opinion that not necessarily anybody wants on that, but I think for a long time, commissions kind of got watered down because they didn't have a lot of volunteers stepping up. So they're like, no, it's only a couple hours, and then a lot of things didn't get done. Hopefully, with the new commission that we're looking at, we'll be able to accomplish some of our proactive items, which may take some time. I said in the last one that we're not allowed to have subcommittees anymore, so we would have to do research on our own and then bring it back to the commission. So might be some of that, but generally, I think it works out that you pick something that you're passionate about so that you enjoy it anyway. So.
And quarterly, there are joint city council and planning commission meetings, which I have mostly been reminded by my phone while the meeting was starting and I was still at work. So those are always something that you have to plan for and make sure you're on your calendar.
But you notice they changed to 6 o'clock this time before they started at 4.
It was amazing. I can get no problem. They used to be at 4, so if that
It's a
doesn't.
joint meeting this time.
About it today.
Oh, good.
Yeah, that was
It's on the agenda.
Okay, good.
add, special session.
Change this meeting instead of starting at 6. We're starting at 6:30 now because people that are still employed gives us time to get here.
And the joint city council and planning commission meetings are key because it gives us, an opportunity to interact with our city council. And the public is there as well. And so those are really productive meetings.
It's been good.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So I guess.
I would
Alan's here for.
suggest that maybe we do Al's first and then we deliberate on the,
Yeah, I think that's. Support that.
I would support that.
Okay. So this next item, this is architecture review. This is for a building that's not an official historic resource. So it's not a historic resource review where it is your actual decision, you're providing a recommendation to the staff on this. And this is a building close to Al's office, just go up St. Helens Street from there. Probably a familiar one to you when you look at the photos. And there's a floor plan in there. And what you can see is they're proposing to convert this multi-suite office building to kind of a mini mart business. And they want to put in coolers and stuff, which are along the walls with the windows. And so we got these plans showing the windows being blocked out. It's an architectural change. We don't know what to talk about. The windows proposed to be covered are not along St. Helens Street. They're on the sides and the back. Generally, the code not too excited about that kind of thing, but we're not talking about the front. And so, you know, it's kind of this discussion of, all right, well, how much does the side matter and how much does the back matter? Now, it's interesting on the side of question, the abutting properties developed the single family dwelling. It's possible that someday, could be 2 years, could be 30 years, someone wants to build a zero lot line building, which would obscure those windows. And, you know, they could be sacrificed by adjacent construction, but they're visible now, and you know, the house could be there for decades too. And so it kind of depends on how you look at that. My main comment was, it seems like the ones in the back might be a little more important. And those, it could be argued that there is a higher desire to preserve those. And you know, thinking about how Halloween Town and stuff like that has evolved, you know, there's a certain character of the downtown, and just in the interviews we talked about, it's pretty universal. You know, there's something special about the downtown. And when we think about the downtown and all the features, you know, there's the gross features, you know, just the buildings, but then there's the totality of everything. And that's when you get into the minutia of the features. And over time, do we preserve them or lose them, and which ones should be preserved? And that's kind of really the question of these standards, and why, at least in viewing it and helping you think about it, you know, the ones in the back, as viewed from the public parking area, does provide, you know, its own little portion of character. And so, will the windows be functional or not? They may, you know, based on these plans, they wouldn't be, but is there still that character from the outside?
I have just,
And that's probably good enough for now on my spiel.
are the windows gonna remain, you're just covering them up? So if somebody in the future wanted to,
That's what I put in, I think I put it in an email. I can't remember. Honestly.
Yeah, you did, and I put it in the memo.
Yeah,
it's in the memo.
Your explanation.
yeah, I see they're covered with fiber cement, but I didn't.
So,
It was gonna be underneath it.
so the answer is yes. Before I begin, you asked the question about historic preservation to all the applicants. I'm an architect. I have a degree from the University of Houston. I have a master's degree in architecture. Part of that master's degree was also a certificate of historic preservation. I am very familiar with the historic preservation guidelines published by the National Trust for Historic Preservation. It was pretty much required reading, and we had to defend any projects that we did during our degree program based on that. So I'm familiar with the National Trust for Historic Preservation guidelines. But to answer your question, the building, as Jacob pointed out, the owner who now owns the building plans on making a little mini mart. I'm sorry to the commissioner who is not in the room, but that's the way it is.
No problem.
That won't work on the TV.
Work on the TV.
No, just, it's,
Jeez, what the hell?
it's not a
What's wrong
projector.
with technology?
Yeah, I know, that was.
Sucks. I know.
Good God.
Gotta
You know, anyway, it's gonna be, central shelves here. Basically coolers along this wall. The windows will not be accessible from the inside at all. The intent is to block in the windows, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, scroll down a little bit. 6, 7, if you go, you've seen it in your packet. The intent, I have not had this discussion with the building code official and we may debate on that, but basically we're gonna use fire treated lumber, covered up with fire treated plywood and then covered over that with fiber cement. So everything is either fire treated or non-combustible. All of the windows that are along the west side, which is that side, face the side yard of the building, which currently has in the side yard, currently there is a trampoline. Essentially, we're covering these windows to avoid vandalism, breaking of the windows. The people inside the store may not know that the windows get broken in the future because they have no access to them and there's a fence in front of the. So it's to, prevent vandalism, to prevent potential deterioration of the windows that do exist. The intent is, as you said, and as Jacob pointed out, cover them over. If somebody in the future does decide they want to, maybe they buy the property next door and there is no longer this party wall question and fire ratings of walls and all the other stuff. Maybe they will open them back up and they can be used and they can still be, the historic windows will still be there. That's kind of my point. That's basically the intent. Now, the front facade, they're not planning at this moment to do anything on the front. It's actually convenient that the 1, 2, 3 westerly windows are actually front. So where they're going to be putting the cooler in front of the 3 frosted windows, it really won't affect anything on the outside. You'll just see frosted windows. All the rest of the windows are clear. So it'll allow natural light into the building, but that's basically it in a nutshell. Now, I want to thank Jacob for getting this on the agenda because it was a late submittal. The 2 things that were in the memo, which at first when I read it, I'm like, what? I just made a copy for you all of the actual documentation from the National Trust for Historic Preservation, which is the description of the building from the original 1984, I think, application. Which describes the building. So, but the only reason I mention that is because I was a little bit confused because a couple of paragraphs or the 2 paragraphs prior to that, it talks about the National Register and then the quote, the citation, section 2.3 that he's quoting. At first I thought it was from the National Register, but it's not. It's actually from the Architectural Guidelines, which I also have a copy for you. The section where those quotes were taken. This is the St. Helens. Oh, you don't want me when I say this, the oldie townie. It's kind of an inside joke, but yeah, anyway, so these are the historic guidelines. And I want to point out that what it says in the historic guidelines, the top title of the chapter is facade and entry. And so the chapter discusses the facade and entry, and then it goes down and it goes through, you know, the rules, and Jacob has quoted these. Now, the thing that I wanted to point out is this. I don't have Black's legal law definition of facade. But in most cases, the definition of a facade is the front elevation, meaning the front section of the building. Sometimes on historic buildings, when you have a monument, which is kind of in the center of a property, then you can consider all facades are important. But in historic districts, normally what you're talking about is the street facade. Because what they're interested in is keeping the character of the street, keeping the character maybe of the plaza, keeping the character of what people experience. Now, the side yard is not the important facade. It is the street facade. And the various definitions that I've provided you pretty much point that out. And I can pick any one of those definitions, and most of those definitions talk about either street facade, the facade that's facing a public street or a public plaza, or sometimes when you have a larger building, you're talking about a larger building and then the facades that face the courtyard. So in this case, what we have is a side wall and a rear wall. And what we're doing, or what we're going to attempt to do, hopefully the building code official will agree, is to cover the windows that are not going to be accessible from the inside, protect them from vandalism, and lastly, cover them in such a way that maybe in the future, somebody might want to uncover them and restore what was in the past. So that is, in a nutshell, what we're asking for.
Thank you.
Yeah, I do. So when you talk about the fiber cement, will you be painting everything to match? Like, will it be just solid? You won't be able to see big squares in this.
No, you will see big squares because simply the original this building was built in 1940. It's exactly the same. Actually, if you look at the floor plan, if you look at the floor, go to the floor plan, please. This floor plan. So what is not, and the email I sent you shows the property line, but the property line is here. And it goes to about there and then goes all the way across there. And the property line is right there. My office is right there. So this is a party hall. And in reality, the building in which I occupy used to have the same exact thing here and here, right there and right there. Because the building I occupy was built in 1927. So it was common practice back then, and I won't say it's common practice, but what has happened is building code has basically said, look, if you're building on a property line, you have to have a 2-hour firewall. So pretty much the 2-hour firewall up until I would say the last 15 years, you could not get a window that would meet a 2-hour fire rating. Nowadays you can, if you want to spend a lot of money on a piece of glass that's about that thick. You can get a 2-hour fire rated window But back in the day, you couldn't. So what happened is the building code basically dictated that if you have a lot line wall, it had to be solid. But what was standard practice back in the day, and I used to live in Philadelphia and I dealt with historic buildings in Philadelphia. All over Philadelphia, there are buildings essentially like this. They built the building on the property line. There were no other buildings next door. So they went ahead and put in windows, and they knew that in the future, if somebody wanted to cover up those windows because they built a building, that was the risk they were taking. In fact, there's some buildings in New York right now where they built a new high rise. And where the new high rise is, there's down here an existing building, but the wall's on a property line. And they still allow the windows to face out. But they know that if somebody else decides to build a high rise right next to them, they will lose those windows. So it used to be common practice, and sometimes in some cities around the country, it's still allowed. But usually the building code dictates that you have to have a solid wall.
Thank you.
I guess my question was, will it be painful?
Oh, sorry. No, because essentially the wall is a board form concrete.
Yes.
So you have kind of a rough concrete wall, and fiber cement is more or less a smooth, it's not perfectly smooth. I would say you can get it in two textures. You can get it in what they call smooth. Then you can also get it in a texture which they call stucco. And it's a little bit bumpier, but it's going to be a different texture than the rough concrete.
Yeah, which I assumed. I just wondered if they were going to be
And
painted.
the intent is to paint it the same color.
Thank you.
Yes.
Right.
I have a question. So is the position of the mini mart owner to be that this is a project that can't move forward unless all the windows are covered, or just anticipating that we may have some discussion of different faces of the building? Is it a possibility to move forward with, like one of the faces having windows covered and another not?
I can't.
You
answer.
may not be in a position to answer
I'm
that.
not the building owner. All I can do is present the floor plan that the building owner asked me to put together as his architect.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I realized as I was saying it that you were probably not the right person to ask. Thank you for your tolerance.
I'm just curious on your thoughts on section 9 of the guidelines. That's specifically pertaining to windows.
Right, that's still the same thing. If you look, I mean, you took this out of the section that talks about entry and facade.
Yeah.
Right, so my point is, the windows in most historic districts, when you're talking about the historic district, you're talking about the streetscape. Well, you're not talking about the rear window that faces a parking lot. And it faces the backside of QC's, faces the backside of the Masonic building, faces the backside of Scandalous Hair Design, and the backside of Bemis Printing, and the backside of the Kalberer building.
That section, it doesn't seem to necessarily focus on facade so much. So that's why I ask.
Okay. I go back to what Jennifer asked is and I've seen this also when I was working in Philadelphia. When I was working in Philadelphia, my first project was to go into North Philadelphia and measure a whole bunch of buildings which were being redeveloped into housing. Well, to protect the buildings from vandalism, they covered up what was behind the cover board. Then later on, when the housing authority got, us involved and had the money to do the project, they took off those, and those buildings that could be saved had their historic windows there. They had not been, well, some of them had been damaged before they covered them up, but essentially you're covering up the windows. I get this. I've read, in fact, I almost brought it with me. I have the latest edition of the National Standards for Historic Preservation. Required reading, that was 2017. When I was in school, the 1997 edition was the required reading at the time, and the language is very similar to what you see on this thing. If you read this document, if you go through it and you read what it says is they're essentially assuming that you're undertaking a restoration project. So this language is talking about when you're ready to go to a restoration project, they're recommending that you don't cover up a window. It's not talking about covering up a window because nothing is happening there, or you're trying to save the window for the future so that maybe in the future you got the historic fabric of the building that someone might want to restore in the future. And I can give you a great example of that. In 1990, I don't know the exact year, they remodeled the historic courtroom in the historic courthouse right here. At that time, Judge Kalberer was in charge of the restoration and in charge of the remodel. Judge Kalberer told me at the time, well, we decided to go ahead and cover up all of the historic flooring with whatever flooring they were using. And, if they want to restore it in the future, it will be there so they know what was there. So that's kind of the intent. All over the East Coast of the United States, you will find buildings that those openings have been covered. Those openings have not been covered because they're doing a historic preservation project. They're trying to just simply preserve the building so that when somebody has the funding or the wherewithal to do a historic preservation, the fabric of the building is there. Any more questions?
I just keep in mind that I read excerpts of the standards. But one of the key elements is first do no harm. And so I like that he's covering up the windows and not taking them out so that if, like he says, somebody else could come in and put them back someday if they wanted to. So I don't have an issue with it. And I think that Mini Mart's kind of high risk business of being broken into, and those windows are perfectly positioned. You don't have to crawl up to anything.
Stand right in front of it.
Stand in front of the window and break in. So I don't have any
And it
issues.
goes in a kind of hidden area too.
Yeah, yeah. So I don't have any issue with
In
blocking
my
it.
business, it was, if the client wanted to, you had the option of preservation in situ. And this is what this is.
Similarly, I appreciate the planning that goes into preserving the underlying character and making it easy for people in the future to do more involved preservation work. I actually was going to have a question about the meaning of facade in the architectural standards, architectural design document. I'm not. I think there is a case that it does largely refer to sort of front-facing or public-facing areas, which I think wouldn't apply to these windows that are facing, the back of this house's yard. I suppose if anyone on the commission, if any of my fellow commissioners wants to talk about these windows facing the back of 2Cs and Company, I'd entertain that conversation. But I think this is a fine plan.
Yeah, like I said, my concern was that they did not look like boarded up windows, the
Yeah.
fact that it looked solid and nice.
This is just a discussion item. Do we need any kind of motion or?
Well, it's a recommendation to staff. So, yeah, that would be a motion. And, you know, if it's, you're okay with it as proposed. the Easiest motion. If you're so inclined, or any modification.
Any modification?
The one thing I would like to see is that, any attachments or any covering of it is reversible, just to make sure, it doesn't impact fabric, as you say, of what is existing. And, try to preserve it as in its state as it's currently.
Want to make a motion to that effect?
As I just said, I'll make a movement. Move for that then, if anybody else has anything. If anybody
I
has-
couldn't really hear what you said. Sorry, my hearing, my right.
No, I
ear is blocked.
apologize. I'm just trying to make sure that anything that it's being covered up, that it is reversible, and it doesn't impact the fabric of the building.
I would second that motion. Or the motion with that proviso.
Been moved and seconded.
Can I make one comment?
Let's-
The difficulty here, is getting an exception from the building code. And, I haven't had that discussion with the building code official yet. I think what I've proposed is a reasonable solution. It just depends on how strict someone wants to define a 2-hour wall. And trying to construct a 2-hour wall with, because essentially on the outside, I have like 3.5 inches. And if without getting into the details, I might not have enough dimension in order to construct that 3-hour wall without removing that window. So I just want to point it out, and I want the Historic Commission to clearly emphasize, we want us to maintain that historic fabric, like you said. So I would like the motion to include, to keep the steel windows in the wall.
I think
that's the interpretation that reversible means the windows remain intact.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's a easy.
Thank you.
That's the reason for your stop work.
Huh?
Is that the reason for the stop work? Yes.
No,
Never mind.
I can tell you, the plaster ceiling is supported by the interior partitions, but not the roof. So the roof is completely independent. They could have ripped out all the walls, but when you look at the walls, it looks like they're load bearing. Well, it's because they're supporting a heavy plaster ceiling.
The remodel.
Yeah.
It's been moved and seconded.
Aye.
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 And
And I'll move for signature thing is.
No
There's
signature.
no signature, it's just,
Damn it.
You were almost ahead of.
Ready, man.
you're slightly more ahead on this one now.
I would love to see you encourage the building owner or whoever to take photographs of the existing windows and get into the museum if you wouldn't mind, so we can,
Oh, okay, sure.
that'd be great.
And it doesn't have anything to do with the windows, but just out of curiosity, are they planning on painting the front facade?
I have not talked to the owner about that.
Okay, just curious.
That awning.
Yeah, I know.
It would be it would be so beautiful.
Two buildings in St. Helens with that particular design.
The awning design or
No,
the?
not the awning, the facade, design. The basic style. There's only 2 buildings in St. Helens like that. And I'll give anybody a quarter if they can figure out what the other one is.
Look at it again.
Got a quarter on the line here.
Yeah, Cole Corner.
Gotta look at the picture again.
It's a great question. Though. Yeah, I know. You have to tell us now.
Then you have to tell us.
Is it the Midway Electric?
That's what I was.
And I can't even accept the quarter because I'm a public employee.
There's a workaround.
It is.
I thought it kind of looked like it.
Yeah, it's basically, you know, sort of late Art Deco. The Midway Electric building was built in the thirties and this was.
Is that the one that had?
1940.
Skate park.
1940 according to this.
They were both built around the same time period.
That Midway Electric is a cool building.
That needs to be restored.
Yeah, agreed.
It's-
I would love to see the flag off to see if there's actually windows behind the flag. I think there are.
There are two. Great.
We take a break.
Yes.
Yes, please.
I'm gonna take a quick restroom break.
Yeah, it's the video.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Russ probably knows it's time to come back.
I have one question that's looking at these applications. Do we check their references? Do we call them or do we? We ask for 3 references. Do we ever do anything with those?
Yeah, I don't think,
I know they never check mine.
There's something you're trying to tell us.
it hasn't, I don't recall it being a focus. It doesn't mean we can't.
Yeah, I'm just curious that when we see them on there and. Right. I'm gonna go ahead. Just. So let's talk about first applicant.
Do we,
Okay.
first off, do we consider all 3 applicants viable?
Well, that's his job. Isn't it, according to the, isn't it the council liaison? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think there's any reason to exclude any one of them.
I did have issue with that that Jay is also on the,
That's what I'm saying. I think that eliminates
Oh,
that aspect.
I don't like him from other commissions. We just, we didn't,
Yeah,
we
you
didn't hear, we
voted for me
didn't hear,
before.
and
Well, and am I correct in
thought James was
recalling that?
fantastic. I thought he was very smart and
I thought he was a fantastic interview. My only comment is that in the past, we worked with really big personalities and it was more distraction than helpful.
and I've seen that too. That is extremely important that we all work together and it's not this inner turmoil where nothing gets accomplished.
Yeah, I mean, he's clearly a sharp guy,
Yeah.
but when you have somebody come in with a big personality, sometimes it's problematic.
So I've got 2 quick questions. Am I correct in understanding that we're currently only looking at 1 opening?
Yes, that's
All right.
correct.
And in terms of the service on multiple commissions, dredging my memory here, but doesn't that require some sort of waiver or extenuating circumstance notation? Or am I just making that up?
No, it's correct, and I'll read it just so everybody is aware. So this is in the Board and Commission resolution rules created back in 2013. And the last rule, so to speak, individuals appointed to one city board, committee, or commission shall not serve on any other city board, committee, or commission during the term of their appointment, provided the council may waive this limitation if it is in the public interest to do so. And so in the past, when we've had this situation, which we've had recently, you know, we talk about it here, we talk about it with our council, and then that way the council can consider that for appointment. So there is that waiver in there, but yes, David, it does take special consideration.
Thank you.
Well, and with Commissioner Herman, though, we had 1 applicant.
Yeah.
So now we have choice of 2 other people that aren't on another commission.
Yeah. I guess for me, I was kind of looking for a specific thing that I really felt was, are we gonna go through each one or do you want just our opinion on the whole thing? Like,
I think it might be easier just to talk about them all, kind of, but
okay, so for me, I was looking for that person who was more interested in what they could do to help rather than what it makes them look like. Does that make sense?
yes.
Not to say anything bad about any of the applicants, because I really thought that they were all great. But for me, the person who, and you know, of course, you can tell by my question, what do you love most about St. Helens? The person to me that really loves the community and loved St. Helens was Trina. I really got a really good vibe from her.
I actually would agree with you. I thought her application was the most complete. You looked at, she gave us a great statement under additional information. She was the only one that did that. It also seemed like I love the, how did you prepare for the interview? I love that question. And I thought she was a standout there. And like the fact that she doesn't also live downtown. So
Yeah, when she said that the city, the arts and the culture and the history of the city tells a story, and I thought that's, that's how I feel. That's a love of the city, which I think you have to have to be on this commission and want to really make a difference, so. what a good fit. And she was funny. So, that's not a requirement.
Response to your question about handling conflict.
Yeah.
Supply chain management. My God, they,
It must be a hard job.
oh,
The Joshua, he also was impactful as an interview too, I thought. With with the first candidate, Jay, I think there's a conflict with that myself. Just because of that, even though I'm on two commissions, and it seems hypocritical, it might be of me, but at the time when I was appointed here, there was no other candidates available. And you have been a vacancy for an extended period of time. But we have viable candidates, and he's on the library. And if that was the case, I would never apply for the planning then.
Can I
chime in on that?
Yes, absolutely.
It's always civic involvement, like if we've got somebody on one. I appreciate that, but I kind of want to see it spread around. I want to get as many people as involved as possible at whatever level that is. And so take that for what it's worth. It's your decision to make, but that's how I look at it.
I feel the same way. I thought he was ideal for the library board, being in publishing and.
Yeah,
like
that's
a good fit.
Great fit.
Yeah.
So for Jay.
From a system standpoint, but I don't know whether if we've got someone
Just a sec,
who,
David.
oh, sorry, go ahead.
Was talking, just hold on just a second.
I apologize.
Yeah, he came to me quite a while ago and asked what he could do for the city, and he said he'd like to get on planning, and I said, well, there's nothing available. Library is in charge for them. So he did get on, and he's great there. As far as your selection goes, I like it. Working from all the cracks, I think that's really important. And then I'm sort of the guy that he likes, to help people and all that. I like the business guy that can look at these situations too. But I did that before and recommended someone to the planning commission, and I was rudely awakened by that down the road. And so, anyway, I think you guys are doing a great job in walking this over.
My only reservation is with the Joshua and Trina was they seem to be lacking a little bit on the civic activities. I don't see anything for Joshua and with Trina, they were just, a one day, looks like. I would like to see more involvement.
David, what was your input?
So I was just going to say, from a sort of procedural standpoint, if we have someone who people feel are qualified for multiple commissions, I don't know if the proper way to handle that is to give them the choice between which one they want, or to have it be the first one they get accepted to, or have the commissions duke it out. That may be a question that it's good for the city to take up the next time we review that part of our code. But my pick of the three, I'm leaning towards Trina anyway, which makes that sort of a non-issue for me at this moment.
Is there an opening on Parks and Trails?
There is.
Because I felt like, I like Josh too, but a lot of what he was talking about, I thought fit more with that.
Yeah.
He would be a good fit for that, yeah.
He signed up for all three, right? Yeah.
Number two is Parks and Trails.
Yeah.
But I don't want to go there because there's a conflict for me then.
Just everybody in agreement with Trina being the.
I am.
Works for me.
I like the diversity that she brings to the conversation and everything else. And
I thought-
living on the other side of the tracks.
Well, and she,
She's in my neighborhood. You guys talk about.
West people.
It's over on the west side.
I mean, I thought she prepared well. She said she'd watched meetings before and she has done some volunteer stuff here. So
Good problem now.
He's my second pick, so,
what's your first?
Jay.
Yeah. What about you?
I was hoping we had two spaces available because I like Jay and Trina. And I didn't, not a dislike Josh, but it was just of the three, I thought those two were really kind of stand out. I agree. I think if we don't need to have somebody that's on another commission, I'd rather go with Trina.
I landed on first and Trina second. But it was very close. I have no qualms. Either of them.
David, what's your choice?
My choice would be Trina.
What do we need to do from here?
Yeah, city recorder is always making sure they get a motion
Okay.
for the recommendation, so we
Would you like
would
to
like
make
that.
that? motion?
I move that we recommend appointment of Trina to the city council. Trina Kingsbury.
Second,
Seconded.
either way. Aye.
Aye.
David, you can't see.
Aye. I'm sorry. I thought my second counted as an aye. Yes, aye.
All right. That all we need on that?
That's all we need, thank you.
I think she'll be a good fit. And I think it's a fantastic idea to recommend. Joshua maybe considers the parks.
Yeah. Asking for that really made me think he should be.
Be a great fit. All right. What do we have here? A 2024 year-end summary report.
Bunch of numbers. And we were at 100, which is kind of in the middle of the last 7, 8 years, 8 years. maybe.
7, I think.
Fine.
9, there you go.
Exciting thing, numbers.
That's it.
Did anybody have any questions when they reviewed it in their packet?
Say I'm a little concerned about the tree removal permits. Haven't had one for years.
No, I was looking at that too.
Yeah,
Like tree forgiveness permit.
It's, honestly, if there's a tree problem in a wetland, I'll look at it. And if it seems like it's enough of a hazard, usually I'll just give them a written okay. It's kind of a judgment call, but I try to be flexible on that.
The code is written so that it exempts trees from the need for a permit if it's a hazard. And
Yeah,
that's
if it's an immediate hazard.
Been a hazard in front of my, across the street from me. It's just been.
is it a street tree?
Well, no, it's set back by the house.
And that permit is specific to trees in wetlands or riparian areas, not just trees anywhere.
Make a big deal of it.
Which is,
Now you
just,
know.
Yeah.
just so you all understand what that is, it's not just any. That would be insane.
Appeals was interesting to me that we had 10 appeals in 2020 and then otherwise it's pretty steady, 1 or 2 appeals.
There was a group of them too, that added the numbers up.
Everybody was home. Nobody had anything to do.
And then the home occupation only being 1.
Well, we used to have a bunch back when we had the type 1 and type 2s, but the type 1s were just pointless, so we got rid of them. And yeah, they're not nearly as common, and that was the hope, to get rid of a kind of a what's this time consuming permitting this that achieve nothing, but wasting time.
All right, anybody have anything else on that report? And the 2025 Joint Planning Commission and City Council meeting times.
Yeah, we wanted to talk about this. So at the December joint meeting, the last regularly scheduled meeting, not the one we had in February, which was a random one, not normally scheduled. There was a discussion about moving the meeting date from 4 to 6 p.m. So we wanted just to discuss that here. But then the council could discuss it. And, the council needs to discuss some other meeting times, and so that would give them the opportunity to revise the public meeting resolution. And so it's just a good time to talk about the date or the time, I mean. And so what do you think? Should it be 6 instead of 4?
I think the 6 enables more people to get there with their jobs, but it was very tight and then we got cut short because of the special session or the executive session, whatever it was, so.
Past time, yes.
The same date as a council meeting,
Yeah, we
so
did.
these wouldn't conflict. Well, they're always.
They're offset, yeah. The normal ones. That one was one that the mayor wanted to have just to get the police station going.
Okay.
And not to have to wait till March. So the idea was, well, let's have the special meeting. Let's have it on the same day as a council meeting. So it's efficient as far as minutes and stuff. And yeah, unfortunately, they did have the executive session, but I think we accomplished what we needed to accomplish with the time that we had. So
Any thoughts from anybody from working people?
Well, like I said, you know, I work out in the field, and so half the time my phone goes off and I'm out at Scappoose Bay looking at EV chargers, or I'm, you know, doing trench inspection somewhere. And so then I think, obviously I could set my timer for earlier and remember. It was just sort of a, I always would feel terrible about missing them because I think they're so important. That being said, this year I've written down all the dates and talked about flexing my time so I can leave early. And so I also understand that staff doesn't always want to stay late in the evenings, and
Yeah, so what
They
time
wanna
do you
go
leave? I mean, what time do you usually leave?
I leave work at 5:30, but I just work in Deer Island. I mean, but
Yeah.
I can leave early. It's just I have to remember to do it. So I've set out my schedule already for the year. Would it be great if they were at 6? Sure, but I also know that these guys have been here all day, and so I'm sure that they
That's,
want another day where they're working.
I have no issue with either time. It's just
Yeah.
hoping after this that we could revisit the 6:30 time here, because these guys are working later, and if it's, because it was Jenny Carlson that had pushed for that. So I thought, you know, we might want to revisit that and maybe set it back.
You know, when I first started, the meeting didn't start till 7. So 6:30 is. I think it's a nice compromise, but. Yeah, what do you?
I'm fine either way, 6:30, so.
Yeah, I mean,
I just
it's
think
fine either way, but I know it makes it easier for you.
Yeah. I can always adjust if I have to, but.
encourage everybody to attend the joint meetings. It's important. We were the ones that kind of pushed for it, I think, to have joint conversation, and we all need to make an effort to show up.
Yeah, and mine was just my own scheduling. You know, I need to schedule meetings in my calendar and give it a 15-minute reminder notice, so it needs to be the day before. So that's my own personal thing. I don't think making staff stay late for another evening is in my, but I'm just one person. There's a whole council and commission and everybody, so I guess I don't care either way.
Well, there's a compromise there too. We went from 4 to 6. But I also want Reed to chime in because he's the one who likes 6:30.
Oh.
And those are quarterly though, right?
Yep.
Okay, so I mean, that's, I can work around the quarterly as opposed, so.
So the commission is indifferent?
Yeah, I am.
I think that's fair.
Next month I'll be retired, so if not, I have a flexible schedule anyway. so.
I mean, whenever.
Next month.
It sounded like Trina had flexibility, right?
Yeah.
Confused.
She's unemployed currently and
Unemployed currently.
I think that there's people maybe who have time.
Clarification for the class?
I mean, council has to agree to it too.
So, I guess the planning commission meeting is gonna stay at 6:30.
Yes.
That
Yes.
accommodates everyone.
Yeah.
The other time, not 6 o'clock, Ross. I told you, it's 6:30.
We were here at 6.
So are we discussing on when the joint?
Joint, yes. What is your feeling?
I can do whatever we can accommodate for everybody. I try to, find a round time that works for everybody.
And so I left before that conversation happened. I don't know, what was the,
I just remember, Chair Shoemaker brought it up and then the mayor chimed in and said that it was more transparent and citizens could attend as well. It was a really short conversation. I feel like only you two said something about it. And I said, well, I'll bring it up at the next meeting. That way everyone can chime in because there were some people absent. And then we also have a staff shortage. Crystal is not our normal. And so that was part of the conversation, but aside from that, that was it.
That's a great point. I forgot about that, having the public be able to attend after they work. That's true. I think 6 is better than 4 for that reason.
Yeah, I mean, it just depends on what's the agenda, because sometimes it's not, there's no visitor comment at the joint meetings. And so attendance isn't mandatory because they can just review the content. In fact, I don't remember the last joint meeting where we had visitor comments.
well, we usually don't ask for comments, but occasionally we have people
Attending.
watching.
In the spirit of transparency, I think that it.
I would say agree with that, but then we're also, online, on Zoom, on YouTube. So I guess my opinion is I would lean more towards the 4 just because of staff. But
For the joint meetings, I want to have to make sure that there's enough time for everything to get done and not be rushed and cut off by, say, an executive session like happened last time. It's the only way I would look at it and then staff time as well. So however, I'll work around anything.
Normally, that's not gonna be a conflict. They're not gonna be on
They're
the
usually
state.
on the second week instead of the first or third. I mean, one other point, just because we're talking about all of it, is sometimes we bring consultants to those and they also are being paid to come out here at 6 or whatever. I don't know. It's just one other thought is I would say at the last maybe 3 out of the 4 we did last year, we had a consultant in attendance. One other consideration.
Better to have them during their regular working hours.
Well, I mean,
They could charge it anyway, it doesn't matter.
yeah, I don't know. I guess it could go either way.
Not worried about consultants, so we're more worried about you guys, a few hours, so.
We kick it back to the council and say, see if anybody there has any strong feelings. I mean,
Yeah.
I could go either way, except for I do like the fact that somebody that works can come attend after they work. At 6 o'clock.
I think the main thing for us as staff is that second week means we have planning commission and then the council joint meeting back to back. And, staying 2 nights, I've done it for so long, it's just kind of the way it goes. I'm just happy I don't have to work weekends like some people, so.
We changed that.
Right, we have no clear leader, so.
So, yeah, it sounds like we're all over the place and there's pros and cons for both and you heard it to help the council discussion.
Yeah.
Which may be as.
So we'll be as ambivalent as you guys.
We can do that.
it's been 4 for how long? It's been,
We only started
we
doing
started, yeah.
them last year.
Here, I think.
so the entire time is what you're saying. It's been at 4 o'clock.
Yeah,
I'm just.
for 1 year, 4 meetings. Yeah.
Move to 6, try it, and it seems to be a problem or something, and you always go back, so. I think they're trying to sort of, bring the times closer together and get everything done at that, in that evening, so.
And there's something to be said about consistency.
Yeah. Sure. Hear from the rest of them.
Or any people coming from out of town to where traffic's an issue and, 4 o'clock traffic versus the 6 o'clock traffic might be a struggle. That's the only thing I think of.
The consultants.
Consultants,
Yeah.
they're getting paid, so they just shouldn't be in traffic. I'm not worried
Leave
about
early.
those guys, we pay them plenty.
All right. Can we move on
I
or?
mean, I like 4 o'clock just because we get done earlier. But I'm also in a position to where my schedule is, I can vary it. So I'm not gonna stick or, try to push that because I can make 6 o'clock just as easy. And I'm in a position I can make 4 o'clock. Next quarter.
All things considered, the biggest factor would be just for the staff.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking 4 o'clock myself.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Train, if everybody's at 4 o'clock, I can agree with that.
Yeah. Shot.
Okay.
Go for.
Still don't know where we're at.
We're not.
We're not, okay,
Don't bring it up.
okay, got it.
Move on. Yeah, we have dialogue to help with the conversation.
All over the place today. All right, miscommunication regarding the Millard Road property. That should be interesting.
Yeah, so this is quick. And so, I've been doing this a long time and I've heard a lot of stuff in this room. That's like, yeah, I'm not sure that's accurate. And you just let things unfold. But we recently had that strength, weaknesses, opportunities and threats exercise with the council. And one of the things that was discussed then was information and impacts to the city. So there were some comments at the January 15th meeting. We heard comments. I didn't really think much of it. But then I heard an employee talk about someone in the community saying, hey, did you hear this? And I'm like, well, you know what? It's probably good to correct it, especially with this group, because as the planning commission, you may be asked, hey, what about this? And I guess I just want to make sure you have the right information. So in January, there was testimony and a couple of these exhibits. And this pertains to the Millard Road property, which the city owns. And if we look at it on the map, the Millard Road property is here. This is Millard Road. It's kind of in the between US 30 and then Ross Road here. And there was a couple things mentioned of concern. And one, so this exhibit here was presented, and I'll put it here for you so you can see it. And the concern was, and this was based on a public records request for the Millard Road property. And I should point out that the within the city's urban growth boundary, the Millard Road, there's about a linear mile of Millard Road and 30 or so properties. And so there's many properties within an urban growth boundary that can be considered the Millard Road property. And so in a public records request, you may get a variety of different emails. And it appears that some communication that we've had with the developer for, 5 years or so off and on was kind of mixed up in that. And that's what this plat here represents. Now, this is a concept, and the location of this one is here. So it's about a half a mile away from this property, and it's on the south side of the property, not the north side. So if you looked at this closely and you looked at the bottom of the property, there's a building there. Well, the last I checked, there's no buildings in the middle of Millard Road. The Millard Road property is on the north side. This is on the south side. And if this was a complete picture, you would see that there is this kind of flag lot projection that goes to Millard Road. The reason I bring this up is one of the concerns that was expressed is that we were recommending a mobile home park for the Millard Road property. And what I believe happened is an email was misconstrued. We were talking, it was a communication with a professional planner. And, one of the questions they had was, one of the things that we talked about was flag lots. And it's a subdivision. It's not in city limits. It'd be in the county, but we comment on development that happens within our urban growth boundary. This lavender line is our urban growth boundary. because eventually the city will grow into that. So we comment on that. And our comprehensive plan map includes designations within the urban growth boundary because that helps determine what things are going to be zoned upon annexation. And the designation here would normally be our R7 or R10 zoning district, which does not allow flag lots. And in my response about the flag lots, just one of the things I mentioned, sometimes when you're talking with another professional planner, you're just brainstorming options and helping them brainstorm options. And there is a large chunk, you can see a manufactured home park here. There's a large chunk adjacent to this property that has a mobile home residential designation. So that does allow mobile home parks. And I should note that about 5 years ago, the things they've talked about here have changed over the years. They talked about a manufactured mobile home park. They talked about larger lots, smaller lots. There's been a variety of things as they explore the options. And the reason I mentioned the potential or consideration of designating this is simply because it's adjacent to that, and that would enable a zoning that would allow flag lots, and it's that simple. And I wasn't saying, hey, you should develop as a manufactured home park. It's simply a designation. It's not a development recommendation. So that really had nothing to do with the city's Millard Road property. And so I thought that was, because that was one of the things that a fellow employee mentioned. Hey, did you hear the city was recommending a manufactured home park on the Millard Road property? So the other exhibit, another exhibit that was presented. So this is another plat example. So this is related to the city's Millard Road property. And it does show lots that are below 5,000 square feet in size. And so the concern on this one is that the city was approving a subdivision with lots below the normal minimum 5,000 square foot lot size, contrary to the council's wishes. Now, the date of this plat predates the resolution that the council adopted talking about that 5,000 square feet. So the timeline's kind of off. And when we had the pre-application conference with the developer that the council chose for this property, because I looked at that plan, and all these dimensions, the lot dimensions and the lot sizes were removed. And so it was just the skeleton of lots. And what I think happened is there was, I think, 3 developers that had proposals to the council to choose. The council chose that one, but they did express the desire that the lot sizes not be below 5,000 square feet. And I think what happened is for the pre-application meeting that we had, rather than just redesigning it, because the pre-application meeting is to get initial feedback for the subdivision just to help people along, they just removed those numbers. And my comments, because we'll take notes and help people remember and help us remember what we said. I noted that the pre-app plans were not to scale. Just please make sure all lots conform with the R5 dimensional standards, such as lot size, width, depth, and such. This will be checked. We've received no subdivision application. We've only had the pre-app meeting, and the property hasn't been sold. So us approving a smaller lot size is just simply incorrect. And I just wanted to make sure that was clear in case you heard rumors in the community.
Can I add something to that, Jacob?
Yeah, sure.
Just for those who don't know, the pre-application meetings happen all the time. The subdivisions don't always happen. A lot of times the subdivision might move forward, but the lot sizes change, where the lot placements are changed. So those initial talks, they're so commonly, not what we end up with, that from my design standpoint, I won't even start designing anything until I get the final one. So I don't even ask for anything from Jacob or from the developer when I'm doing any designs, because what they start out with is 100% not going to be what they end up with. And so I don't even look at them. And so just to kind of back that up, I guess, is that happens all the time. There's stuff that's brought in, just because the city has a copy of it doesn't mean anybody ever did anything.
Appreciate that clarification, because I have heard that rumor around town.
I was confused. I mean, miscommunication in St. Helen? Thanks God. Yeah.
Before we move on to the planning director decisions, I don't see the proactive items on here. I'd like to just take a couple minutes and see if we can.
That's my mistake. I did the agenda. It wasn't intentional.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, not at all.
How do we include our new rules remaining as we resolved a proactive planning commission? Does that mean that we consistently have 30 minutes on every meeting that we discuss the proactive items on the research you've done on your own? I mean, the first step, I think, is really assigning people to who would like to do the research on the items that we already have on our proactive list. But I'm just looking for some feedback on how we might actually remain a proactive commission with our parameters that we've been built.
I mean, there's fact finding. You can gather facts and you can, from my understanding, and you can do that in concert with somebody else or a number of people, I think, as long as there isn't any decision making. And I think you can use that umbrella as a way of protecting yourself.
I don't think that we can have two commission members doing something together outside of this room.
I think no quorums and no, I mean, I think that could really be misconstrued into a subcommittee.
Yeah, because, yeah,
I'd be comfortable participating that way.
me too. Me.
Well, again, as I said, fact finding, that's what they defined for us too at that presentation at the library. That there's that aspect that, it's such a crippling view that we're taking that it's a detriment to getting things done. City.
Do we have any insight into how other small communities handle this? I mean, I understand that like Portland is big enough and staffed up enough that they can farm out some of this fact finding and whatnot to full-time staff attached to commissions, but surely other people in Oregon are running into this problem. I'm just wondering if anyone else has found a solution.
Good question.
Yeah, and I think it's a huge problem because like at that presentation, they talked about the rules being in place, but only recently they really looked at them closely and started providing this more careful advisory. But yeah, it is a good question. It's a question I can post on the planner listserv just to see what kind of answers we get.
Yeah, I'd be interested just to see if anyone else has thoughts or practices they're finding useful.
At the last joint meeting in December, I was re-listening to it to hear about the meeting time, and City Administrator John Walsh talked about trainings they have, and I don't know if those are getting more detailed, because that first one seemed like a big overview of ethics and public meetings law. But as they drill down, I mean, maybe there's more feedback. And then if there's someone here giving a training, you can ask follow-up questions and things like that. He said he would look into it. John's a very busy person. I don't know how far that's gone, but I think he mentioned the LOC doing training. So that also might be an avenue to get more information.
Well, at least I think that let's all really consider it before the next meeting so that we can
Yeah.
come to the table with some ideas on how we accomplish it.
Sounds good.
I think setting.
I mean, while I agree, I think with your reading or your interpretation of it, my concern with that would be just even from a perception standpoint. Once you start gathering together and you're saying you're not making any decisions, the perception could still be out there and be brought up, and it makes it hard to say, yeah, well, you came back in with a coordinated response, therefore you were discussing it and,
Making decisions.
blurring that line a little bit.
Yeah.
So that would be my concern.
Yeah, and the omission of that, it's just because Christina's not here, so we're kind of,
No, that
position's vacant.
wasn't
But it was
a big deal to me. I just,
plaza,
the architectural,
central standards.
vacant storefronts.
Residential architecture.
That's right, vacant storefronts, yeah.
And I'll put them back on so we can at least talk about it.
We also had an agenda item discussion. I think a heading in that was just discussion or.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then-
that's what she's talking about, that she'll add it back onto
Okay.
the agenda. But for me, honestly, I feel like it seems like a work session within our meeting might be helpful. Whether that's 15 minutes of meeting or half an hour of meeting, and then we just know that we're gonna work on it and we need to be prepared to do that. Otherwise, don't see it happening.
And I think we were also excited about some of the things that we were planning and gonna accomplish, and then we were,
Things cut out from under us.
it's a little dramatic, but yes.
Well,
It's effective.
the plaza one, I don't think is gonna be that difficult. Controversial part of that would be the trees. But architectural standards and vacant storefronts are gonna be a big deal.
Yeah.
So. I mean, our goal is to go to the city council with recommendations. That's what we're fact finding and coming up with some kind of strategy to take to city council, right?
It's an advisory.
It is, yeah, so.
There is a joint meeting coming up too on March 12th.
That might be a good time to.
Yeah, I mean,
discuss
it's
it
just
too.
next month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Be a good time to discuss it too. That's before our meeting then, or after our meeting?
One day after.
After our
So
meeting.
March 11th will be the planning commission and then March 12th.
Okay, so why don't we at our meeting take a few minutes and decide what our strategy is to go to the city council with, and then we'll discuss it at the city council.
We get it on an agenda.
And the
I'll put it back.
And the timing is good because, our last 2-year strategic plan, we're past that 2-year mark. And so, I don't know who's gonna do it because the people who did it before aren't here now. But we are due for another 2-year strategic plan. And so, these kind of items help potentially inform that.
On the vacant storefronts, one of the topics, I know Main Street did quite a. They been out to you guys at all?
They did, yeah, at the joint meeting they did.
Yeah, okay, that's right.
Yeah, and then it just fizzled.
Fizzled out from there. I think there was some enthusiasm there, and
It's a tough one.
it's gonna be a hard one, yeah.
It's very broad and, yeah, it's broad.
And I think there was a lot going on at that time. We ran into a little bit of controversy too, I think. So revisiting it now might be a good time to do that.
Okay, great. So planning director decisions previously emailed to us. Does anybody have any questions on those?
Agreed, just for your knowledge, these are, you're CC'd on decisions that staff make. So all of our administrative decisions, if you have a question, you can bring it up at the next meeting or you can email. That's what this section's about. There's no action there.
Okay.
Yeah.
The big one is, it's not big by itself, but at 1645 Railroad Avenue, that's the Armstrong site. Which could be a new data center. That permitting is separate Some of this is potential precursor to that. So that's one of our important industrial sites, so.
They opened a data center with no power.
Well, power is one of the things that they need.
Quite a gamble. All right, planning department activity reports. We're doing December and January.
And I didn't refresh my memory on those.
Those are also just FYI, if you have questions, really.
Yeah.
We don't really have presentations for them.
Okay.
If you wanted to read them, they're in the online packet.
Basically, the code amendment stuff that we've been working on that most of you are tired of working on. We've got to dodge that one.
Yeah, I was curious about that, I'm sorry, that when we were presented on changes we needed to make with single room occupancy and things,
Yeah.
where it was presented to us like it's mandated, you got to figure out how to do this. It's not a yes or no, it's how are you going to do it? And then it gets to city council, and the city council says no.
No, the city council, what the city council rejected,
Was manufactured homes.
the manufactured home related amendments, manufactured and prefabricated home amendments. And the amendments that would allow detached multifamily, the cottage cluster stuff. That was, and that one was not mandated by the state. That one was, in our 2016, 17, 18 housing needs analysis, whatever date it was. And that's, that's what the council has the ability to do. But
Could we have said the same thing though? Could we have, I mean, it presented to me, I felt like I couldn't say no, that I didn't
I thought it was
figure out
state
how to
law.
do it. I thought it was state law that we
Still
had.
state law.
And they're saying, you're just choosing to say no.
the manufactured home, prefabricated home is state law, yeah.
Yeah.
So we will have outdated code in that case. And then the detached multi-dwelling, we just don't have that. And I don't know if we'd have a lot of use of it anyway, so it's not the end of the world.
And there was nothing done with the SRO.
The SRO was kept. Yeah.
And so do I understand it correctly that the historic district or the very few historic landmarks in the community, those make it exempt on certain laws, like you don't have to have a manufactured home next to a city landmark, right? Within the historic district.
Yeah, the hope is that being in the code would reinforce those provisions of state law. Without it in the code, there's a question is, can we still implement that based on state law?
So it sounds like that tied to your hands a little bit.
Maybe. But it was at the, it came up on the second reading. So the best thing to do is just, you know what, if that's an issue, we'll just delete all those amendments and maybe we'll deal with them later. Because of all the effort put, we had to salvage the effort. So, and the great majority of the amendments survived, so.
So, as you said, it was capped for the SROs. Is that the cap is not the same as what the state law states then? Is that what I understand?
Well, the state law says that local governments shall allow single room occupancy. And there's a different threshold depending on whether it's a single family or duplex zoning, or if multifamily is allowed. And you have the different rules based on that, and it's based on law. There's not, the thresholds are within that.
They didn't change from when you reviewed them, if that was your question.
Yeah. There's six, so recall there's six.
Yes, if it's not a place that allows multifamily, it's up to 6. Yeah, it didn't change. It just, it stayed and it was accepted by the government.
I think go ahead.
I was just saying that because we had people come in during the public hearing, with concerns about that. And saying that in Lake Oswego, they wouldn't be having that, this wouldn't be allowed. So just So maybe want to call Lake Oswego and see what they were doing. I never did.
You know, I wish people understood how important public testimony is too. Because when you have something presented before you and there's no testimony for or against.
Yeah.
You'll notice you'll have some hearings that are just
Yeah.
very emotional.
Yeah.
I wish we always had public testimony on, help us through those decisions. So the only other comment I'd like to say is, I'd like to encourage everybody to really speak up. I always review the meetings when we're done, and it's hard to hear some of us. The sound system isn't great, and we could all just remember to speak up so people can hear us. That'd be great. And on that, I think we adjourn.
Thanks, y'all. Good to see you, however remotely.